From the Rio Grande to the Mediterranean, from the English Channel to the River Jordan, from Poland to South Africa, the existential threat to national sovereignty is the same: asylum. Not abuse of asylum, but asylum policy itself. In a 2019 statement on the border emergency, President Trump said, "A nation without borders is not a nation at all."
All right, I'm here with Mark Krikorian, who gave an amazing speech about asylum. First of all, identify yourself to our viewers who might not be familiar with you. You've been fighting this immigration fight a long time.
Yeah, I'm Mark Krikorian, Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies. We're a little think tank in D.C. We're what I call a boutique think tank. We just do immigration, unlike the department store think tanks that do everything. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. And, it seems like, at least on the right, the issue is moving in the right direction, because there was for a long time really strong opposition among the business and libertarian folks, basically wanting unlimited immigration. And they're still there, but they're not driving the bus anymore.
They benefit from lower wages, higher property prices. It's, cheaper tech workers, whatever. But I think there's a pushback. What do you make of what happened in the UK with Nigel Farage and his Reform Party, and in France with Marine Le Pen? Both of those were really immigration-focused campaigns, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people are misreading it. I mean, the left won in the sense that, they're going to have governing power. But when you look at the share of the vote, the electorate has moved right significantly on immigration, both in France and in the UK. So it's those two things can happen at the same time. But I think in the short term, it's bad news. I mean, the Labor government, the woman in charge of immigration, the Home Secretary, she's actually tweeted a picture of herself out with holding a piece of paper saying "refugees welcome." Yeah, Britain and France are in for some bad times, but clearly the public mood is shifting, and it seems like in the longer term, I'm not British or French, but I would be optimistic if I were, at least in the long term.
Especially in the UK, Farage has normalized talking about this subject. Before, really, it was a cartel. Now, you talked about asylum as a legal concept. That was fascinating. I've never heard of that before, your critique of it. Can you explain for our viewers, why is the concept of asylum an outdated Cold War idea? You talked about Soviet ballerinas. Those of us, who are over 40 might remember that great movie where, the Russian guy comes over and says, "I defect," and the whole, that was Yakov Smirnov. He launched a whole career.
Williams also had a movie like that. Remember Moscow on the Hudson, where he defected in Macy's, and he was a musician in a Russian circus a band. But again,
it was obscure and rare back then.
Right, it was very rare because it was hard to get out of the Soviet Union. And the third world was mostly still colonies of various countries. And the populations were smaller, and it was hard to get here. What asylum is now is it's turned into the main way of illegally immigrating to Europe or to the United States, or frankly, Israel, Australia, even South Africa is facing this. And in South Africa, the government just recently issued a report saying that they're going to withdraw from the Refugee Convention and then re-sign up for it, but with exceptions and reservations that aren't in there. So,
wow, if South Africa can do that, theoretically, anyone could do that. I mean, again, maybe they're breaking the taboo first. Has any country withdrawn from the Human Rights Convention before them?
No, this is the Refugee Convention, and no one's withdrawn from it yet, except that it's a treaty. And every treaty, by definition, has a clause saying that here's the way you withdraw from it. You give notice, 6 months, whatever it is. Anybody can do it. It's just that you have to want to do it. I suggested it to the first Trump administration. It never got anywhere. I assume Jared Kushner or something squashed the idea. But I can very much see the administration, a future Trump administration, withdrawing from it. Now, you then have to change your law. That in itself doesn't solve the problem, but it's the essential first step.
I got one last question for you. I appreciate your time. In Canada, we're not as far gone as France and the UK, but we're further gone than America, I think, although some of the stats you were talking about were astonishing. Is there such a thing as remigration, or mass deportation might sound a little harsh, but I look across Canada right now, there's 900,000 student visas. That's more than there are Canadian nationals in university. I see the pro-Hamas street marches. Most of them speak with a thick foreign accent. They're new on the ground. How do you normalize sending these folks back home, especially if they came here claiming they were in danger back home, but they obviously aren't?
The easiest one, obviously, is people who are themselves illegal. In other words, they're not in a legal status. But what you have to know about immigration, whether it's legal or illegal, is that there's always churn. There's always people leaving, even in normal circumstances. And so the solution, I mean, it's kind of simplistic, but it's real, is that you reduce the number of new people coming in and you increase the number of people leaving. And most of that doesn't even have to be forced removal where you take someone in custody and deport them. Some of that you have to do, there's no question about it. But even during the 1950s, we had something unfortunately called Operation Wetback, which was a normal term back then to deport illegal immigrants, Mexican illegal immigrants. Most of the illegal immigrants who left on their own because they started the operation and the other illegal immigrants got the message that the party was over and that they would be wise to wrap up their affairs, pack up the car, and go home on their own before they got arrested. And so the issue is, I call it attrition. You squeeze the illegal population and even legal people with student visas or whatever, you tighten up the requirements, you enforce the requirements, and you not only physically remove some people, but you persuade an even larger number of people that it's time to go back. And that's not a perfect solution. It's not going to solve everything, but you can, in fact, reverse the trend and get people to leave, even if you don't take them all into custody.
Last question. What do you think about the term net zero immigration? We've heard about net zero carbon. What do you think of net zero immigration?
It's something we've even written about it years ago. Zero net migration is the kind of stock term for that. I think it's not a bad idea. The thing is, it's a goal to shoot for, but you can never really know how many people are leaving because at least in the United States, and I'm pretty sure Canada's the same thing, it's not like you need an exit visa. So you really don't know for sure how many people are leaving and how many people are just going for a junior year abroad in Italy or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But yes, that would be, in fact, I would say more broadly, the goal should be what I call demographic conservatism, which is to say countries, their populations, whether it's ethnic, religious, whatever the makeup is, it's always going to change. The ancient Greeks said you can never step in the same river twice because the water is moving. Your country changes. Changes, though, should be slow and gradual. One of the speakers quoted Thomas Jefferson saying, immigrants should spread themselves out thinly across our population so they're quickly amalgamated. Well, change should be slow. Immigration should be low so that when immigrants come, they don't have that big an effect on the society. So that even if you screw up and let in people you shouldn't, if we had one Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, well, that would be bad, but it would be one person. If you have 20,000 Somalis in one city, well, then you've made significant changes there that you can't really, that are hard to undo. So anyway, the point is, yes, zero net migration is a sensible way to think about the issue. I'm just not sure you could fix that into law because you don't have a legal yardstick for how many people are leaving. You see what I mean?
Very interesting stuff. We'll have to talk to you more often, especially about Canada's immigration crisis. Great to talk to you today.
Good luck to you guys. And what asylum does is not lead to open borders. This, I think, is a mistake in our terminology. There's still somebody at the border. What it does is it takes away the ability of democratic governments to control who enters and lives in their own countries. Since the end of the Cold War, the forces opposed to the very idea of the nation have made increasing use of the post-World War II asylum regime to subvert the ability of self-governing peoples to control who enters and remains in their own countries. The current system, usually referred to just as refugee system, but in our law, in US law, there's a difference between refugees and asylum, was established in 1951 with the Convention relating to the status of refugees. Only applied to people in Europe, and it only applied to people who had been displaced before the convention was ratified or signed. In other words, people displaced by World War II and the Red Army subjugation of Eastern Europe. That framework was then universalized in 1967 in what is called the Protocol relating to the status of refugees, which was exactly the same, it just applied everywhere in the world and applied prospectively in the future. And there are two aspects to this, one of which is not problematic, the other is I think the fundamental existential threat to national sovereignty. The first one is refugee resettlement. This is a sovereign act where a person who is in a camp or something overseas is brought into a country of resettlement. It could be a good idea, bad idea, it could be done well, it could be done poorly, but it is a sovereign act of the nation involved. The other part, and this is the problematic part, is asylum. Asylum is for an alien who is already in the country, usually illegally, and then seeks refugee status as a way of avoiding deportation. It represents a surrender of sovereignty, a pledge to permit foreigners to decide who's going to live in your country, rather than the citizens of that country. It reframes immigration as a right rather than a privilege, a claim that an illegal immigrant can make against a country, regardless of what the laws of that country set as far as levels and characteristics of immigration.